Hi, welcome back to another episode of the Community Made podcast. We talk about all things healing sexual abuse for women. So, we talk about everything from healing your nervous system to finding closure and so much more. Today, we are actually going to talk about the 4 states of the stress response so that you can actually find closure. Now, I'm really learning and diving deep into understanding the nervous system and really understanding how to actually regulate it. So I've been taking a course, and so I already kind of want to give you what I've been learning so that number one, it integrates for me. Of course, it's a little self-serving, I know, but that's okay. But also so that you can kind of get an understanding of what your nervous system state may actually be in as a survivor. So I think it's very important to be aware of this because as I'm actually learning, depending on which state you're in of the stress response, it depends on what kind of exercises you might be doing to help yourself out of the stress response and into regulation. So let's begin by kind of understanding. You may know already that we have a nervous system. We have the autonomic nervous system. And within that autonomic nervous system, there's several branches, but more specifically, we are going to be talking about the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. Within the sympathetic nervous system, we really know this as fight or flight. And in the parasympathetic nervous system, most of us know this as rest and digest. But being aware of this, not only is there more branches within the parasympathetic nervous system, but you also have a dorsal vagal response and a ventral vagal response. What happens is that if you do come into the parasympathetic nervous system under freeze or fawn, this is actually a dorsal vagal response and still part of our survival coping mechanism in our stress response. The goal of us to be within the parasympathetic nervous system is in the ventral vagal, which is really about rest and digest, or better known, I believe, on a deeper level, we want to be in safety and connection. So I want us to be very aware of that as we go into this because I feel like there's a little bit of misconceptions of what's happening within our nervous system and where we're supposed to be at. And I want to bring that to your attention. I know this is super technical, but I want to bring that to your attention because I thought the same thing. So let's talk about fight and flight and what that might actually look like in your nervous system. So we're going to go over symptoms, okay? So you might actually be really tight in your neck and your traps and your shoulders. So for me specifically, I feel like me and my sister were actually just talking about this. I feel like I carry the weight on my shoulders. And so what happens when you carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, right? You're tight, you're hunched in, and you kind of don't have the best posture. So maybe you also might feel like you're also always ready to run. This might actually look like more specifically, like when things are like hitting the fan, when shit's hitting the fan, you rather escape. Like maybe, and it doesn't have to be necessarily with drugs or with drinking. It could be with reading, with social media, personal development, reframing, all of those things so that we don't necessarily have to really deal with what's happening. This also might look like wanting to physically run. This could also look like when maybe things are going well between you and your partner, and because they're going so well, it feels unsafe, and then your nervous system triggers you into that fight or flight, and then you're like putting them at an arm's distance or even sabotaging as well. So you want to really be aware of what it is that you're working with within your day to day. Okay, your energy might be high and anxious or always turned on. And so this is going to look like, do you allow yourself to rest without guilt? If you feel like you are not allowed to rest without guilt, this could be a huge indication that you are actually in the sympathetic nervous system. You might have issues with your gut. So that means you might really struggle with maybe constipation and going regularly, or you might always feel like your stomach is knotted, or you might have stomach pains. Okay, listen, y'all, I have just learned how important this is because I have really struggled with this, and especially now as I feel like I'm noticing more and more that I might actually have still been stuck in fight and flight. And so I can feel it like as I've learned this, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is why I have so many issues with my stomach lately. And so I want you to just be aware. Now, look, I'm not a doctor. There could be other things. Okay. Please don't just bank on this, but maybe this might be what's going on, especially if you have these other symptoms. Okay, you might also have a felt sense of fear, anxiety, anger, irritation, and panic. And this might even look like, you come unhinged really easily. You project things out onto your children. Maybe your children really trigger you. Like no matter what, even if you're having a good day, the second they start crying or asking for something, you just go off the rails. And I'm not here to judge. Okay. I've done the same shit. So maybe this also might look like you're easily irritated. I want you to think about maybe right before you start your period, are you normally like really irritated? And does that play out throughout your months, regardless of how close you are to your period? You also might experience chronic inflammation. This is because there's no rest and digest, right? You're not allowing yourself to breathe. You're not allowing yourself to come into a space of safety. So this is super important to be aware of. So now on the other states, let's look at fawn and freeze. Fawn and freeze are both like really shut down states. So even though they're part of the parasympathetic nervous system, we don't really want to be in this dorsal vagal state because now we're still dealing with maybe not speaking up for ourselves and all of those things. And so that's going to be very important for us to be aware of, especially as survivors, because, one of the success rates, as we've discussed in another episode, is you taking care of yourself. And taking care of yourself, depending on where you're at in your journey, might look like boundaries and other things. And if you are in this dorsal vagal state within your parasympathetic nervous system, you may not actually be able to do that no matter how hard you try. Okay, so this is kind of like you're floppy and low tone. You're just kind of like dragging ass. You have low energy and vitality. You have low motivation. So this might look like even though you really know that you want to do X, Y, and Z, you can't bring yourself to do it. Okay. We know this better as procrastination, aka sabotage. You also might deal with chronic diarrhea, like you might constantly just go to the bathroom. You might also deal with emotions of depression, helplessness, and hopelessness. So this just kind of feels like almost like you're powerless. No matter what it is that you do, nothing seems to get better, and everything just feels like it's constantly caving in. This might also be there for you. And of course, chronic fatigue, where no matter how much sleep you get, no matter what it is that you're doing, you just feel like you have absolutely no energy. And this could be because you are in this fawn and freeze state. The goal here is to be in your ventral vagal, which is also part of the sympathetic nervous system. So how to kind of know if you're in this space and not in the stress response states. So you might be softening of your muscles, releasing of your muscles. You're not bracing. It's ease to like more breathful. So what does that mean? You're like breathing from your belly up instead of shallow from your chest up. You might be flow and in a steady state. This is what we might actually call as alignment, where we're feeling really good. Things are flowing. You're able to work. There's not anything like overprotectiveness or feeling like you have to fight people or you need to run people. There's none of that kind of energy going on. You just feel really good and headed towards your goals, if you will. Your gut, you're soft and regular. You are clear, coherent. You're able to really make decisions for your life, and You can see reality options and choices. And your overall well-being is about being adaptive and resilient. So that's really what you want to be aiming for. Now, that doesn't mean that you're always going to be in that state, and it doesn't mean that you're always going to be in the other four states, okay? The goal here is to be aware of which one you might be so that you can start to notice these things and make corrections, especially if you're in the fight or flight. What can you do to slow down? And then if you're in the other space, what can you do to start to bring your energy back online and be in this flow state? That's why it's very important for us to be aware of which state we're in, because we're going to do very different things to help us find closure in our nervous system, depending on which state we might be in. Now, let's talk about this a little bit more. There might be a caveat because sometimes we do go into them intermingly. Like there are some things about the shutdown that I've noticed that I also do, like I don't always set boundaries. Sometimes I do get afraid of being seen and heard. So there are also those things, but I want you to really focus on the dominant physical symptoms because I feel like that's a little bit more noticeable because as survivors, we might have a little bit of all of them within us. And so it's very important to realize what it is that you're actually working with so that you can find closure. Now, speaking of closure, I actually have a workshop coming up. It's a 2-hour workshop so survivors can find closure. I will leave the link for you down below. I would love to hear your thoughts and your feelings. And if this helped you, you can drop comments and all of the things down below. And I will see you in the next episode. All right, bye.